And so Jacob's in a similar situation to what his grandfather was in, because Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. So, chapter 28, I'm going to start reading in verse 10 of chapter 28. The Bible reads, "And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took the stones of that place and put them for his pillows, and laid down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed." This is very similar to what he said to Abraham, if you remember. Verse 14, "And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed." Almost exactly what he told his grandfather. Of course, Jacob is the twin brother of Esau. Esau doesn't get this promise because it is through Jacob that this promise happens. And so, it's not going to be anything that's going to happen with Edom. It's going to be happening with, Jacob and Israel. And so, of course, we also remember that, the book of Galatians is really good about Paul explaining that we are to interpret this in a spiritual way. So while he may be talking about his physical, the seed of Israel or anything like that, we look at that as we are the spiritual descendants of Abraham and Jacob, because, we are God's chosen people today. So when we look at this, that's kind of the way, we interpret this kind of thing. Verse 15, "And behold, I am with thee," this is God speaking to Jacob, "and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of." And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." And he was afraid and said, "How dreadful is this place! This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first. So again, this is Bethel. This is where Abraham was at. And Jacob says, surely this is the house of God. He gets the same promise here that Abraham got. And it's interesting that Jacob, though, is getting ready to leave the promised land. He has to leave the land because, Esau is running after him, and Rebekah sent him back to her land to get a wife, which would be Rachel, Leah. He makes a mess of the whole thing. He comes back with 4 wives, of course. But this is right after Jacob had deceived Esau and gotten the birthright. For the pot of the bowl of porridge and, that kind of thing. And so now Jacob is having to run for his life. He basically has nothing. And then he comes to this place and he dreams this dream. And in a similar way to Abraham, God promises him, hey, you're going to inherit, everything here. I'm going to bring you back to this land because, Jacob is currently getting ready to leave the land to find his wife. He said, I'm going to bring you back, and, you're going to prosper, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what God tells Jacob here. And so this is kind of, in a similar way to Abraham, this is kind of Jacob starting out in his Christian life, starting out being blessed by God. Notice what Jacob says in verse 20. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat, and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God, and this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th unto thee. I mean, this is a great vow here that Jacob has. A lot of people just read over this kind of thing, but understand what Jacob is asking for. It's the same thing that God promises that he will provide for us, that Jesus promises that he will provide for us in the New Testament. Food and clothes. If you have food and clothes, you should be content. If God takes care of the flowers, he will take care of you. So that's all you need to survive. Food and clothes. And that is all that Jacob asks of God here. Jacob doesn't say, if God brings me back with all kinds of, wives and kids and, herds and all kinds of stuff. If he blesses me with all that, then I'll serve him. No, he just asks for what God already promises us that he will give us if we believe in him. Food and raiment. That's it. That's all he asked for. What about shelter? Jesus didn't have a place to lay his head. So, it's not like you're guaranteed a house. Now, it is nice to sleep in a house or something like that. And here in the United States of America, no one should ever have to sleep out in the cold. We've got rescue missions. We've got all sorts of things everywhere. Plus, there's all sorts of help that people can get. You're like, oh, well, they're sleeping on the street. Usually they're a drug addict or a drunk or something like that, and they're out there because of their own accord. Really through their own stupidity. So if you have food and raiment, you should be content. Everybody here clearly has that. So that's all that Jacob asked for from God. Kind of interesting. He gets a whole lot more. Notice that he says here, of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th unto thee. So he's already setting up the tithing, which Abraham tithed as well. When Melchizedek came out and everything, he gave him tithes of all. So Jacob says, I will tithe. I will do that kind of thing with whatever God gives me. He doesn't know what God's going to give him. Okay. He has nothing right now. He is just basically running, and he's going to go to his uncle's house, Laban's house. And Laban was Rebekah's brother, and that's where he's going to find a wife. But notice he's not freeloading off of Laban. He works for Laban. He works for his uncle. And this is a concept that, we need to take to heart. You don't freeload off of family members, and Jacob was not a guy that would do that. So he was going to go and work for his uncle, winds up working for his uncle, even though his uncle is a shyster. He's a crook, man. He changes his wages 10 times and all sorts of things, but Jacob perseveres, and, God brings him back into this land as he promised him he would, with tons of stuff. Now, Jacob makes some mistakes along the way. Like I say, Rebekah sent him off for a wife. Jacob comes back with 4. And, kids, but all sorts of stuff. And he's been gone for years and years. It's like 20 years, plus years, that he's been gone from the land. But God always will keep his promises. So here, when Jacob is starting out, he has a dream here at Bethel, and this is where God gives him, promises. Then Jacob goes to Laban. He finds Rachel. He, of course, marries Leah. He's got Bilhah and Zilpah as well. Comes back with 12 sons and a daughter, at least, that we know of. 12 sons, at least one daughter, which we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes. And all kinds of cattle and everything. He's able to make peace with Esau. So things seem to be going pretty good for Jacob. And when things are going pretty good for Jacob, that's when things sort of fall apart. That's when he runs into trouble. And so let's take a look at that story in Genesis chapter 34. A little bit different than the story of Abraham going down to Egypt, but a similar thing. Jacob has, if you look from chapter 28 through chapter 34, we will see that really Jacob wrestles with God there at one point. That's where God touches this hollow and of his thigh there, and he has a limp for the rest of his life. But really, other than that, we don't see much of God in these chapters. And Jacob he's rolling along pretty good. He's got lots of cattle and stuff, and he's got a little bit of a dysfunctional family. But anyone who has 4 wives and multiple children with different wives will have a dysfunctional family. Even today. You're like, oh, people don't have 4 wives today. Yes, they do. They marry one, have kids, divorce, marry another one, have kids, divorce, marry another one. Look, that's how many wives have you had? And how many different kids? And everything goes smoothly, right? In that family. Never. Never at all. And so, that's part of, Jacob's struggles here. So he's kind of rolling along here. There's no real indication that he's, straying from God or anything, but it seems like as we read through this part of Jacob's story, he's kind of going through the motions, like a lot of Christians do. Maybe their Christians are going to church, but maybe other things have crept into their life as well, that are taking more preeminence than they should. Maybe there are other gods that they're, serving as well as, Jesus, because people can, you can serve Jesus, and then, here comes the God of money, or the God of a TV show that causes you to miss church on Wednesday nights, or something like that. I'll never forget way back several years ago, I was going to a church, and Tanya and I went Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, which is why I do 3 services here. That's what we did. But we had friends that would skip Wednesday night service because of a show called American Idol. IDOL. Skipping church because of an idol. And they never really seem to see the irony in that. You're skipping church for a show that has idol in the word. I think you're putting that in front of God as an idol. It even says it in the title. So, it's kind of funny that people are, oh, yeah, no, I can't, no, they're doing the finals of American Idol tonight. Yeah, it really happened. And people, they don't really think that's an issue. So those are people like that who, yes, are Christian, yes, are going to church, but they're not really thinking about it much. They're kind of going through the motions. And so interestingly enough, there is one couple that I can think of in particular that had that issue that are now divorced, and their kids are kind of a mess. Of course, their kids are the age of my kids now, and they're a mess. I wonder if that's maybe because you put other idols in front of God. A lot of churches say, oh, we'll never do that. We'll never put we'll always put God first. We will never put anything in front of God. However, we will be canceling church on the second Sunday in February at 6 o'clock. Does anybody know why that would be? We have somebody that knows anyways. That's the Sunday night of the Super Bowl, and most churches in the United States of America are closed on Sunday night of the Super Bowl. There you go. Yeah. So look, isn't that whole church then kind of putting, something else in front of? Or, we're going to meet at the church. The youth are going to have a Super Bowl party downstairs. I've heard of that. I'm not against youth having parties and meetings and stuff like that. But, a Super Bowl party, really? I mean, have you seen the commercials? So, have you seen what's, the things that are being shown, the halftime show, so. Anyways, it should not be put in front of God. It should be, you want to watch the Super Bowl, fine, tape it. I don't know if people tape things these days. Certainly you can find it somewhere, after church. Should be able to just fine. Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of, I think, where Jacob is here. Now, let's just read this story in chapter 34. Chapter 34, verse 1. So here we're talking about one of Jacob's daughters. I don't know if he had more than one. She's the only one that's mentioned. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And this is where a lot of Christian girls get into trouble. They go out to see the daughters of the land. The daughters of the land, I'll keep the language down a little bit. They're like ladies of the night, okay? The daughters of the land, they don't have a whole lot of morality, to be quite honest with you. And the Dinahs, our daughters, the ones in our congregation, to be quite honest with you, they're pretty gullible if they get out there with the daughters of the land. They're going to get in trouble. This has not changed since Old Testament times to 2023. This kind of thing still happens. So, chapter 34, verse 1, and Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. So, yes, she's going out to see the daughters of the land, but the sons of the land are out there as well. And Shechem finds her. Now, some of the newer versions of the Bible say that he forced her. That's not said here. And there are Christian girls that, again, they get seduced out there in the world. They may regret it later, but they do it willingly because they don't know any better, because they're kind of dumb. Yeah, and lest you think I'm just picking on the girls, teenage boys are some of the dumbest as well. So just to let you know, but in this case, she I don't think she was easy, hard to seduce probably by Shechem, who told her how good you look in that robe or whatever, something like that, just buttered her up, I would imagine. So verse 3. So this is a guy named Shechem. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel. So he really did, he really did like her. He wasn't just going to love her and leave her. Okay, he intended to marry her. Just kind of put the cart before the horse. This never happens with Christian girls today, does it? It pretty much happens all the time. So verse 4, and Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons, which remember he's got 11 at this point, because Benjamin hasn't been born yet. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. So, Jacob's found out about this, so we're going to have to settle this thing. There's really not a police or anything to handcuff Shechem and put him in jail. He's a political person anyways. Political people don't get put in jail for this kind of thing. Not in the Old Testament and not in 2023. So verse 7, and the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. So, they're upset that it wasn't, anything, things weren't done proper. He's a heathen, and so Dinah's older brothers, probably it's primarily her older brothers, probably not all 12 of them, were pretty upset with what was going on here. Verse 8, and Hamor communed with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you, give her him to wife. And make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get you possessions therein. And Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren, Let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as ye shall say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. So he really likes Dinah. He wants to marry her. He says, hey, I'll do a dowry or anything. Shechem is trying to be honorable here, certainly more honorable than many in this situation in the Bible, including at one point David, right? Because David lied with Bathsheba, and instead of, facing up to it, getting the situation resolved with Uriah the Hittite, he has Uriah the Hittite killed. So Shechem here is being more honorable than David was in that situation. He is trying to straighten this thing out. And Hamor's dad is trying as well. However, Shechem and Hamor are not followers of God. And the Bible warns us in many places not to be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Any saved man or woman who is married to an unsaved man or woman can tell you it is hard to live that way, unequally yoked. One of you are focused on God, the other one's not. It's just one of those things that will creep up and be a problem. So we see here in verse 13, the brothers of Jacob, the sons of Jacob, come up with something for Shechem and for those folks to do. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor's father deceitfully, so they are tricking them. They never have any plans to go through with this. And said, because he had defiled Dinah their sister, and they said unto them, We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this we will consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Now, circumcision for a full-grown man is not a pleasant thing, I'm sure. No doubt painful. We'll put you out of commission for a little while. Verse 16, Then we will give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if ye will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So they are willing to go through with this. Dinah must really be quite a catch for Shechem to willingly go through something like this. And the young man deferred not to do the thing because he had delight in Jacob's daughter. Note this, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. So Shechem's, yes, he lay with Dinah, but he's more honorable than the rest of his father's house. This tells me that it probably was not a forcible thing. He probably just sweet-talked her, that kind of thing. Verse 20, And Hamor and Shechem his son came into the gate of the city and communed with the men of the city, saying, These men are peaceable with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. And let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people. If every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised, shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out at the gate of a city, and every male was circumcised that went out of the gate of a city. I mean, they must have quite some pull, these guys, Shechem and Hamor, because they're able to convince everybody to get circumcised in this city. Verse 25, And it came to pass on the third day when they were sore so obviously they were sore because of the circumcision, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. Of course, not hard to do. They're all a bit handicapped. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep and their oxen and their asses and that which was in the city and that which was in the field, and all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives took they captive and spoiled even all that was in the house. So do you think the punishment fit the crime here? I don't think so. I think the punishment was a little harsh for the crime. First off, it was only Shechem that committed a crime. But now Jacob's sons are killing the whole city, spoiling everything, just because of this one instance here with Dinah. So they went overboard, no doubt about it. And they don't really see that they went overboard because in verse 30, and Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And they said, should he deal with our sisters with an harlot? So Jacob's pretty upset with them, and he should be. He's like, hey, you punished them way more than should have been punished here. And now I wouldn't be surprised if, all of the people in this land gathered up their armies together, conspired against me, and killed me. All I've got is us. So, Jacob's a little bit put out by this. And they're like, well, he shouldn't have dealt with our sister that way. That's kind of simplistic thinking there. Let the punishment fit the crime. And anyways, again, as I've preached here recently, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay it. So, Jacob now is in a tight spot. He's responsible for all these lives and everything, and for the naivety, apparently, of his sons. They're just having to figure something out here. So, chapter 35, verse 1. And God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. So Jacob's in a tight spot, and what does God say? Well, why don't you go back to Bethel and dwell there? It's a reset. It's getting your life straightened out and cleaned up. And Jacob needs this because, as we see here in verse 2, then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way in which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So notice that God tells Jacob, well, you need to get out of this area. Go back to Bethel, back where I was with you when you were first in distress. Jacob said, okay. So he gets the family together, and he says, get your lives in order. Clean up. Put away your strange gods. So Jacob he's just been kind of letting things go, I think. Because God looked at Abraham when he went out to Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said, I know that Abraham's going to command his family to follow me. And that's the reputation that Abraham had. Look, we're going to follow God. Joshua says, choose this day whom you will serve. These gods over on the other side of the flood, or, the gods of the Amorites, or, the one true God. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It looks like Jacob's been a little bit lax with that rule. He's kind of gotten complacent over time. Because otherwise, why would he have to say, put away strange gods? So he tells his family, look, we're going to go back to Bethel. We're going to get straightened back out with God, because clearly we've fallen lax in some places. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of the strange gods we have. We need to clean ourselves up. We need to get rid of the piercings, the earring piercings or whatever, stuff like that, the jewelry and stuff. And we're going to go back to where I was when I first had nothing and God promised me a whole bunch of stuff. Now I've got a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm in bad shape. I'm in trouble, because of the people of the land. So God says, hey, come on back. Makes me think he hadn't been to Bethel in a while. Probably should have made it there a little more often than he did. So the point of this morning and this evening is, a lot of people, they start out well. Obviously, you're saved, you're a Christian. People are they're like sprinting. There's no reason. You see oftentimes people get saved and they just want to they just want to get involved in everything. They're like a little child. Like the little girl that was here this morning. She's just now starting to learn to walk. She was moving fast. She was walking fast, right? Well, she hasn't learned to pace herself yet. And that's something that a lot of young Christians have trouble with. And they want to get involved in all kinds of things, and then hard times hit, rough times hit, or whatever, and then they just disappear. They're done. There's famine in the land, or there's some kind of trouble, some kind of problem, and they get out of church. They get away from Bethel, spiritually. The way to get themselves straightened back out is always get back to Bethel. Yet so many people don't see that, and they just hang around in the land, and like I say, they're miserable, they're in bad shape, they don't know how to escape. A good reset in 2023 is to get back to Bethel, is to get back to where you were when you were first starting out. Get back to those first works. Get back to where you were when you were first a Christian, because so many people after a few months, they fall out and they don't come back. And they're like, well, I can't get back to church because, my life's too rough or something like that. That's not biblical at all. Getting back to Bethel can help you because it gets your focus back on God. Hey, we need to put away the strange gods. And then Jacob probably looks around. He's like, wow, I didn't realize we had so many strange gods over the years that we've, collected and stuff. We need to get rid of all these things. And they're getting rid of earrings and all kinds of stuff like that. Getting rid of a lot of worldly stuff that they didn't realize probably that they had gathered over the years. When they get back to doing things God's way. After this story, we see Jacob get straightened up quite a bit. Now, his sons still have a lot of problems, but he gets straightened out quite a bit after this story. A lot of times it comes with experience, because Jacob has a son, Judah, that's the same way. Judah's a mess when he's younger. Then he gets straightened out and he becomes, a real leader and very responsible when he's older. So that's, kind of Bethel in the book of Genesis. It's kind of a theme in Genesis, where these guys are going to Bethel to get straightened out, start all over again. We've kind of made a mess of things. Let's get back to what works and try it again. That's what we have to do, because we will have times, right now our slate is clean for 2023. Nope. Gravel Hill Baptist Church hasn't messed up. Everyone that is here tonight, I'll bet you have not messed up as far as your Christian life goes in 2023, because we're on day one. So, give us time, and we will, a few times through this year, be like, man, what happened? All of a sudden I hadn't been to church in 3 weeks. And all kinds of problems are happening. Man, it's time to get back. Time to get back to Bethel, get this thing straightened out. Start again. A righteous man will fall 7 times and get up 7 times, according to the book of Proverbs. So that's certainly something different between us and the people of this world, because they'll oftentimes fall and then they just wind up, they have no way to get up or anything like that. So that's, kind of today's lesson here on January the 1st. Always good to have a January the 1st, because I can look at this and I can think, you know what? I have been to every church service this year. Yeah. So far, so good. I've read my Bible every single day this year. So, yeah, go to bed tonight. All right, fantastic. And then we'll see what happens tomorrow. Exactly. But there's always, if you need to reset, there's always a way to reset. There's always a way to get straightened out. Let's pray. Dear Father, I thank you for this day and for your many blessings to us and for your word, Lord. And thank you for the truths that it holds and the stories that it has for us that we can learn from both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, Lord. And Lord, I thank you that, again, that your mercies are new every morning, Lord. Every day we get up with a new